Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. We can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. It's a horrible number. We all together have done a very good job.
As the nation surpassed 4 million COVID cases and over 145,000 deaths this week.
It's something that we have tremendous control of. I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope.
You're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. The virus is going to disappear. I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine.
The coronavirus itself, SARS-CoV-2, is here to stay.
As the U.S. surpasses a staggering 400,000 deaths, the incoming CDC director says another 100,000 could die in the next month.
It is what it is.
It's going to fade away.
We're in very good shape.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Big, massive dumps.
Around the nation. Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. Hey, it's Thursday. Welcome. Welcome. We're going to have a good show for you today. A lot of fun stuff, some serious stuff as well, including, can you hack an election using a thermostat? We are answering the important questions on today's show. So, fun times. We also, of course, going to talk about the war on Christmas, because you know it's here. The war on Christmas, it's here, even though it's only October. You know what? This is a thing, okay? I created a bumper for this because I know how much we're going to end up talking about it. Because the war on Christmas, the insanity that never ends. As with the Republicans, always. We also have Kellyanne Conway. She's back, and she's basically saying, why didn't Biden? Why hasn't Biden been getting everybody vaccinated? I just don't understand what happened. Fun. Yeah, I'm just gonna tear that apart. We also have Lauren Boebert, and that's related, of course, to Norway, the situation that had happened in Norway. Very, very sad situation, and I'll touch on that, of course. And then finally, we're going to get into Striketober, and there's a media report on Striketober that's actually really surprisingly well done on mainstream media. Wow. So we're going to watch that. That's going to be fun. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit and be surprised. So what kind of thermostat? Wait for it. Wait for it, Junk Saint. You'll have to watch. You'll have to watch. And so I'm going to give you some details on that, as well as some, of course, input from somebody who actually knows a lot about election security, has studied this quite a bit. And so this is great. It's going to be a great show. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. Helps us get out to more and more people. Spreads the progressive message. So, all right. Anyway, that said, welcome to all our viewers, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Hopefully the network does not go down like it did yesterday, because that was a total disaster. Just my luck, of course. I get a gigantic raid from TYT on Twitch, and then crash, explode. Technology sometimes. Technology. Thank you, Vite and Gale, for the indisputable TYT YouTube mini raid. Thank you, all the viewers coming over from Indisputable. It is indisputably a good thing to see you. Very good to see you. All right. Anyway, let's go in to War on Christmas. Let's start out with that. That's always fun. Okay. Fox News is attacking President Joe Biden over the shortage of toys, which means it's time for the War on Christmas.
Over the years, we've taken on the role of protecting the federal holiday of Christmas.
They don't use the word Christmas because it's not politically correct.
There are some Americans who are offended by any reference to Jesus Christ.
Do you realize that Starbucks wanted to take Christ and Christmas off of their brand new cups? That's why they're just plain red.
They'll say Happy New Year, and they'll say other things.
In fact, do you realize that Starbucks isn't allowed to say Merry Christmas to customers?
There's a full-out war on faith in this country by the other side.
We're saying Merry Christmas again.
We're saying Merry Christmas again. That's right, even though it's actually Halloween. I mean, Halloween is like 2 weeks away. Thanksgiving, 6 weeks away. And Christmas, even further away. Nonetheless, here we go. Fox News pushing the annual War on Christmas. So now they're going to go in, and they're basically what they're going to do is that they're going to blame the supply chain issues, which has been caused by, I don't know, the worldwide pandemic that we've been experiencing. That whole thing that's killed over 700,000 Americans and 4 million people across the world. No, they're going to blame that, the supply chain shortages caused from that, on Joe Biden. So now the recount, it's a Twitter account. They do fantastic videos showing ridiculousness. They actually did a little bit of a mashup of Fox News coverage. Take a look.
The supply chain crunch that threatens to spoil the holiday season. There will be things that people can't get.
Toys not getting shipped.
Toys like Tonka trucks.
Tonka trucks.
Tonka trucks. Yeah. My Little Pony, Care Bears.
It's the type of things that make or break a Christmas.
Lincoln Logs. Care Bears. Tonka trucks. My Little Pony.
We've showed you the kind of trek from the Care Bear in a factory in China to the store in Massachusetts.
Well, this is the togetherness Care Bear, and everybody needs to be together, and everybody needs a hug. They're going to be harder to find.
If people can't get bacon, and people can't get a Tonka toy.
Oh no! Oh no! We can't get a Tonka toy.
Oh no!
Oh, Christmas is ruined. Everything is ruined. I'm actually more concerned about the bacon shortage. What? Well, oh no! I am actually concerned about that one. No. Okay. Whatever shall I do? I know. I'm gonna blame Joe Biden. God damn it, Biden. You know what's funny? This entire thing, for one, it's nonsense. And for two, this is actually like blaming the president for gas prices. So there's one thing that I don't like to do, is I don't like to go after a president for gas prices. Why? Because it's ridiculous. The president does not set gas prices. And I see this everywhere because it's so common for people, especially on the conservative side, to like blame high gas prices on a president. He doesn't set the prices. Obviously, since it is such a normal, hot button kind of kitchen table, like concern, right? Because everybody has to buy gas. Obviously, you can go to work, you gotta buy gas. You go to school, you go to store, whatever, you gotta buy gas, right? And so that does have a gigantic impact on your family, home heating costs as well. So that does have a gigantic impact. And so the thing is, though, they like to blame the people who are in charge. And they just happen to blame the president. Now, the president, again, and I'm going to go back to George W. Bush here, where he was like, I don't do anything about that. If I had a magic wand, I would say low gas prices. Okay. Yes, but you don't have the magic wand. You don't. And so, look, I understand that policy also has an effect. Okay. So yes, president signs policy. Congress, of course, goes through and passes policy. The president's supposed to use the bully pulpit to push it, et cetera, et cetera. And so, there are various factors at play in dealing with gas prices, but generally, what it comes down to is the market forces. Since we have a global energy market, okay, so oil is traded globally, and then if you've got gas stations, you got corporations, oil companies, fossil fuel companies, et cetera. Now, let me just get a little conspiratorial for a second. I know I debunk a lot of conspiracies on my show, but I have a couple of my own. Okay, here's one of them, right? So we know fossil fuel companies love Republicans. Well, they also love corporate Democrats, Henry Cuellar, Joe Manchin, et cetera, right? And so now they love these politicians because they shower them with campaign money, campaign cash. And in return, because there's always something in return. I know Washington gets real mad at that. Like, oh, how dare you? How dare you impugn our beloved Congress people and say that they're able to get a bribe, that these companies actually expect something back for all these millions of dollars in donations? How dare you? No, dude, just give me these politicians because they care about the country. No, that's absolute utter garbage, bullshit. The dumbest thing I've ever heard. You lie to me like that to my face. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, I'm not that. Who's stupid enough to believe that? Nobody believes that. But in Washington, they've all deluded themselves into saying, oh, no, of course, all of our politicians, we are all pure. We are as pure as, as the white snow. But literally white in that case. Perfect. How dare you think that we could be ever influenced by any sort of money that corporations give us? And just the insinuation is enough to get you kicked out of any room in Washington. So, or in the Beltway. And in a lot of cases, probably a lot of newsrooms as well. And so, where I was going with that is that you have these companies that pay off politicians, right? And they like Republicans because Republicans give them tax cuts and deregulate their industry so that they end up actually pocketing more money. Where the so-called conspiracy comes into play, right? Conspiratorialism is, so now, you ever notice low gas prices during Republican administrations, right? During the Trump administration, for example. Higher gas prices during Democratic administrations. I'm wondering if fossil fuel companies, not only since they give to Republicans, also might conspire to raise their prices a little bit so that people will blame Democrats for raising your gas price and vote for Republicans. Again, that's my conspiratorial mind at work. And so when you think about it, it's like, well, it kind of makes sense because, again, when Republicans win, they get tax cuts, they get deregulation. So that's just me. And so now, getting back to it, the shipping companies, right? So now the shipping companies are massively affected or have been massively affected by the pandemic. Now, the pandemic is still not over, especially in the rest of the world, nowhere near. And so as a result, these companies have had a lot of issues. You've had factories all over the world that have had a lot of issues that are not producing as much. There's demand that's really, really high. For example, we got shortages of microchips, right? That's a big one. This is why I don't have a PlayStation 5. I want a PlayStation 5. I want a video card, right? An RTX 3070. I cannot get those things. Unless I want to pay like super, super high prices from like a scalper. But no, I would rather set myself on fire in Roblox than pay a scalper. Fuck scalpers. All right? I don't want it that much. I'm not going to overpay for something. But anyway, so, and not only that, this is why vehicles have shot up in price too and are sitting in the lots because they don't have these microchips in them. And so there's a shortage for all these devices. Okay. And again, it's the pandemic. It's the result of the pandemic. Now, in the United States, we're drowning in vaccines. We literally have, a ton of vaccines. And the richer nations also have tons and tons of vaccines. Who doesn't have the vaccine? Poor countries. Poor countries. And look, these big corporations, these pharmaceutical companies, they hold all the patents. Now, Biden came out and said, well, we're going to release the patents so that the rest of the world, Big Pharma, not a fan of that. And they said, no, we don't want somebody else to make these vaccines. We still want to make money for them. And so, like any corporation, of course, they have to, they're very, very protective of their patents. And so, all of that. And so, as a result, the vaccine getting out to the rest of the world has actually been incredibly slow. And so that has caused a lot of issues with supply chains as well. And I don't know, in the last story that I saw about the Biden administration waiving patents was back in May. I haven't seen any sort of update. As far as I know, it's still being protected by patents. So that's not to say, of course, that Joe Biden is the reason you can't get a Tonka truck. No, this entire thing is quite complicated. And it is important to note as well that Biden has been working on trying to do something. For example, on Wednesday, Biden announced steps to increase capacity at key ports and enlisted several other big companies, Walmart, Target, and others, to try to do something to increase, basically to restock their shelves, to make sure that they have enough for the Christmas rush. Why? Because full consumerism must not be abated. So, again, consumerism, by the way, it's literally the only thing that's keeping our economy or country afloat. Buying tons of junk. that's just kind of what we have to do. I'm sorry, not half, but we're expected to do as Americans, buy tons of crap. And that's what Christmas has turned into, essentially. It's been commercialized. And that's all the Republicans at this point care about. Now, again, the supply chain issues are very complicated, but Fox News understand they don't do complicated. They don't understand complicated. They don't really care about complicated. In fact, here's Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham. I've just got some, images of what their shows look like. You can probably guess what it's about here. So, look, the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It's Hannity. Lovely. The Biden Who Stole Christmas. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that nice little Photoshop of Biden in the green. Yeah. Lovely. And then you have the Republican Party, GOP, putting this out. This is the guys who is trying to steal Christmas. Americans are not going to let that happen. It's the guys. Not only that, but you also are now having members of Congress. This is Tom Cotton, who went on Fox News to talk about this. Take a look.
The White House is saying that you're probably not going to be able to get everything you want for Christmas. Well, I mean, who's going to save Christmas for Americans? Pete Buttigieg? I mean, please. Pete Buttigieg couldn't organize a one-car funeral. He's not going to organize our nation's ports and railroads and highways and airports.
Okay. I don't know. I kind of like to dig at Pete Buttigieg for a second there. Kind of funny, Tom. Nonetheless, also kind of stupid. Because that's who he is, Tom Cotton. But understand, like, Fox News, at this point, the people on Fox News are nothing but a caricature. I'm convinced. They're not real people, obviously. And nobody freaks out about the war on Christmas as much as Fox News does. And, of course, there's a reason, right? But, like, sometimes I just want to take these people, shake them, and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you saying these insane things? What are you doing? How is what you're doing going to help with anything in this country? What is wrong with you? I feel like Jon Stewart going on Crossfire with Tucker Carlson. Yeah, I just want to be like, you're hurting America. Please stop. Just stop. Just stop. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything positive. What is wrong with you? I mean, complete and utter joke. Except, unfortunately, there are people that actually believe in this stuff. The Fox News audience eats it up with a spoon. They're like, oh yeah, Joe Biden. If I can't get a, what was it? Like, this, I'm dating myself here. Like, oh, I can't get a Furby. Like, who wants a Furby to begin with? Those things were kind of creepy when you think about it. But like, who wants a Furby? But Fox News is like, oh, I can't get one of those. No, I can't get that. By the way, who plays with Tonka trucks and Lincoln Logs anyway? Does any young person even know what those are anymore? Seriously, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's insane. But the people watching this, well, that's what they identify with, because Fox News' audience is way, way older. And so they're like, oh my God, I can't believe the left is trying to cancel Christmas. And they do it, of course, because, well, the network knows what it's doing. For one, the advertisers want you to buy crap. That's it. The advertisers. And Fox News loves their advertisers, the ones that are still there. And, you know, again, they want you to blame Democrats, both the advertisers on Fox News and the Fox News hosts, because guess what? If you vote out Democrats, nobody's going to raise your taxes if you're a rich person. And that's what it is. It's about taxes, it's about deregulation, and of course, they do the culture war stuff in order to trick you, in order to distract you from economic issues, so that you would constantly vote for Republicans because you're mad about culture war bullshit. Essentially. All right. What the heck is a Lincoln Log? I don't know. I don't know. I'm confused about it too. We can't get stuff for Xmas because none of it's made in the USA. Don G, 100%. You're right. We have outsourced all of our manufacturing to China, to Vietnam, to, you know, places that are essentially low wage. And I say we, I don't really mean we, I mean corporations. Multinational corporations who are just looking for people to exploit for cheap labor. Now, you got to be careful when you talk about that too, because look, I don't blame the workers. Worker solidarity. I think what we need is to have solidarity with workers all across the world. Those people that are working in Chinese factories for American companies at very, very low wages, they're exploited workers. They are exploited workers by these giant multinational corporations. And so what we have to do is we have to remember those people are not our enemy. The enemy is greed. The enemy is corporations. These large corporations that that only put profit above everything else. So, anyway. All right. Go to Kellyanne Conway. This is a fun story. Former Trump staffer Kellyanne Conway is lying again. Well, how can I tell? Because she's talking. In fact, she recently went on Fox News and said this.
President Trump's administration under Operation Warp Speed, we handed over 3 approved vaccines to Biden and Harris. All they had to do was run a marketing campaign. That's all they had to do. We did the science part. They were approved and ready to go. 13 million Americans received the vaccine while Donald Trump was still in the White House, including none other than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
All right, so now basically what she's trying to say is, well, we did the science. We did everything right when it came to the pandemic, and then we handed it over to Biden and Harris, and obviously they've messed it up so bad that people aren't getting vaccines. What did they do wrong? What did they do wrong? Now you realize, for one, you didn't do the science, okay? You didn't create the vaccines. Scientists did. The scientists did the science. Trump wasn't out there with a little lab coat, tiny little armholes for his tiny little hands. He wasn't out there with a beaker, doing this. Oh no, we're not gonna pour this. No, Trump wasn't out there. None of you were out there. The scientists did the science. And by the way, 13 million Americans did get a vaccine when Trump was in office. That's good. And yes, as of today, 391 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in the United States total. And since the vaccines were approved, an average of 801,889 doses per day were administered. Now, of course, you got to give credit where credit is due. The Trump administration funded the vaccine, did the Operation Warp Speed, they got it approved rather quickly, and that's great. That's good news. We give them credit for that. All right? But here's the issue, right? This is not a failure of marketing from Biden. Again, you can watch local TV. I see ads for people to get vaccines all the time. And so this is not a failure of the marketing campaign. Okay. Now, what's going on here? Where the real failure was in marketing was the Trump administration not marketing the vaccine at all, or barely. And not only that, but you also had the Trump administration, Trump himself, first downplaying the virus, then downplaying the vaccine, and that, of course, allowed the amount of Americans to get infected by it to increase exponentially, and then, continue to put out disinformation, misinformation, or not push back against disinformation. Now the Republican Party, unfortunately, has a very large anti-vax contingent at its core. And not like, you even have people who are like, oh yeah, I've taken all the other vaccines, except for this one. Not taking this one. The one that's supposed to help with the pandemic. And so understand that right now we have a pandemic of primarily the unvaccinated, which happen to primarily be made up of Republicans. Now, Republicans despise Joe Biden, and really they despise any, Democrat, okay? And so understand that they're not going to trust a goddamn thing that Biden or Harris or any Democratic official is actually going to say, whether it's true or not, okay? By nature of being a Republican. They just don't believe it. Now, here's the thing. When I evaluate somebody, something that somebody says that I don't agree with, say, I'm talking to a Republican or whatever, and he says something. Now, I'm going to look for one thing when I'm talking to them. Facts. Are you saying things that are factual? Are you saying things that, can be proven with evidence? So if what you're saying is true, even if I disagree with you politically, well, I'm going to agree with you because you're saying factual information. If I say, if they say, well, the sky's blue during the day, and I'm, yeah, of course, facts. Water's wet. Yes, I agree with you. I agree on fundamental things like this, okay? But unfortunately, with today's Republican Party, you get, if you say something that's factual, they're like, no, I don't agree with that. Don't agree. It's ridiculous. But again, if you say something that's true, I'm gonna agree with you because it's factual. Sometimes there are situations where I may question somebody's motives, but again, facts are facts. Okay, facts are facts, and they don't care about your feelings. Now, the facts are the vaccine is generally a positive thing. Other facts are Donald Trump did not push the vaccines enough. In fact, he's done it a couple of times now. This is after the fact, when he could have been pushing it in the beginning of his administration and saying strongly, you should get your vaccine. No, he waffles all the time. He says, oh, I got the vaccine. You should probably get the vaccine too, but, I believe in freedom, so you don't have to. And of course, every time he brings up the fact that, you should probably get a vaccine, he gets booed by his audience. Interesting. And there's, of course, a reason. It's the fact that you have conservative outlets that have put out massive vaccine disinformation. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna show you an example of some of the stuff. This is some of the recent stuff that has been said about vaccines on different conservative outlets. Take a look.
It seems like we are truly living a 1984 Orwellian novel, right?
Natural immunity has essentially been kind of tossed aside.
We're now told there's a third wave, and this may undercut the effectiveness of the vaccines. How effective are the vaccines? Do we know so far?
The vaccines, unfortunately, appear to be declining in effectiveness very quickly, and I believe this is why Twitter has me blocked.
Yeah, well, what is this? Why is natural immunity not a thing?
It seems like it's 1942 Germany, right? Show me your papers or else.
We have to believe in science. We have to follow the data.
The sheep are being rewarded by their masters. This is big pharma in bed with big government, and they're forcing all Americans, get vaccinated or else.
And the data is clear. Children are not great threats to themselves or anyone else when it comes to COVID. It's simply backed up by every piece of data that we have. In fact, we know from VAERS reporting, vaccine adverse effects reporting, and although it's imperfect, we know from that the risk to children from the vaccine outweighs the risk to COVID.
We don't have sovereignty over our bodies. We have to take a vaccine that's not really a vaccine, it's mRNA. We have to do all of these things.
With side effects numbering in the hundreds of thousands, with the death toll, we don't know what it is. They've said it's 10, 12,000. Are they reporting all the deaths and tying it to the vax? No. Just like they're over-reporting the number of deaths from COVID.
Gee, I wonder why conservatives aren't getting vaccinated at higher numbers. You know what? It must be Biden's fault. God damn Biden. God damn it. You know, look, there are legitimate criticisms of how Joe Biden, the Biden administration, has handled COVID. Now, I think, for example, reopening schools and getting people back to work as quick as possible was a terrible idea. I think we should have had reoccurring stimulus checks for a while, okay, for some time in order to drive down the numbers. And because right now we have had a lot of surges with the Delta variant that have been clogging up hospitals. I've talked about this quite a bit, okay? That said, right, I think that, look, I think that there's only so much you can do when a third of the country believes in insane things. Those things that they hear on, Facebook, YouTube, social media, etc., emails, or look, even just turning on your television, okay? So that is important to point out, but here's the thing. Kellyanne Conway absolutely ignores all of those things. Why? Because she's a goddamn liar. Pure and simple. She's playing politics. So the Republicans are literally killing their own base and then blaming it on Biden to, I don't know, what, rile up more Republicans to vote for Republicans? I don't know what the goal is here. I don't understand. I used to think that people had the ability to be rational and to actually care about other people. I'm not so sure anymore, all right? There seems to be a group in this country of people who are hell-bent in making sure that their fellow countrymen and women become as miserable as possible or die for their own amusement. And, of course, they would also call this freedom. Now, I showed you a bunch of them who are paid very, very handsomely in order to do that. And I think that's where the big problem lies, in actually being able to bring down the numbers of people who are dying from this pandemic. All right. Let's go to election security. This is an interesting story. All right. Former President Donald Trump once ordered an investigation into thermostats he thought might have been responsible for hacking the election. So now this comes from ABC News reporter Jonathan Karl's upcoming book, Betrayal. Then President Trump had asked Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe to investigate the Nest Smart Thermostat. So, okay, so now there's a conspiracy going around, unsurprisingly from the right wing, that no, some of the elections in the building, they had the thermostats, which were hacked by the Chinese. So now that idea came from Jeffrey Clark, the acting assistant attorney general for the Justice Department Civil Division. So now Clark believed that wireless thermostats made in China for Google by a manufacturer called Nest Labs might have been used to manipulate voting machines in Georgia. According to the report, Clark sent Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue an email in late December demanding access to the DNI's classified intel to investigate whether a smart thermostat had been used to connect a Dominion voting machine to the Chinese government. The demand was one of two urgent action items Clark had presented to Rosen and Donahue in the email. The other was an alarming proposal that the Justice Department sent a letter to Georgia baselessly claiming the state's election results were corrupt and advising the GOP-controlled legislature to replace Biden's electors with new ones. So, this is bonkers. Kind of a new one. I'd never really heard of thermostats, Chinese thermostats hacking election machines before. That is a new one. Understand, that is insane. And by the way, this comes from a guy, Jeffrey Clark, who said basically no matter what, I still believe Trump, and I'm going to try to get the Justice Department to steal the election for Trump. And they're using these conspiracies. So now, where do they come up with this stuff? Well, for one, they don't understand how any of this stuff actually works. And honestly, to create a conspiracy around this, you don't actually need to understand this. So, but let me give you some details, because actually I looked into it, and this is actually pretty interesting. So now it turns out Nest is, again, Nest is a smart thermostat, okay? And so, according to security researchers, is actually one of the most secure devices that can be used in your home. Now, that said, can it be hacked? Actually, yes, but anything that's connected with the internet, to the internet, can actually be hacked. I mean, any device, if you're knowledgeable enough, can be hacked. So now, is it possible? As I said, yes. Is it simple? No. So for the case of Nest, you would likely have to have physical access to the device. So you'd have to be in the building or connected to the same network. TrapX engineering professors found that they could get control of Nest's Linux OS when the device is loading the custom software before or while booting the OS. It's at that point that the attacker can break through the device's security walls. A USB port on the device can load the attacker's custom software and would stop sending data and the message to the Nest's original services. Attackers can then receive this data if the device is under their control. So again, you would need to be there in person, at the right place, at the right time, with the right software, not get caught. Obviously, very difficult to do, but yet doable. So now there's a story back in 2019 where a hacker was able to gain access to somebody's Nest device, their camera, and through that device, get access to some of the rest of their smart home devices. So that's again, very, very rare, very difficult to do. And at the end of the day, what they had to do is change their network ID in order to stop the attack. Now, again, the problem with this particular conspiracy theory is that the voting machines are not generally hooked up to the internet. I mean, you'd be stupid to hook it up to the internet during an election. That didn't happen. So now there are some some tabulators, election tabulators, that do have modems installed. Okay, and so that's a possibility that when they get hooked up to the internet to report their results. Okay, there's a possibility that it could somehow, at the right time, the right place, if they knew all this stuff. And again, very, very unlikely, that they could somehow intercept the data. Is that likely? No. Did it happen? No. Multiple investigations have not uncovered any evidence that machines in Georgia especially, or anywhere else in the country, had any votes changed at all. Okay? So now, not only that, but Georgia also had 3 different hand recounts of paper ballots. All right? And so, no evidence, completely bonkers theory, right? A lot of things would have to go on simultaneously for something like this to happen. Very, very unlikely. So now, what could happen from taking control of a thermostat connected to smart devices, maybe, just maybe, you could use it to spearfish somehow, like passwords, but that's only if you're dumb enough to have the same password for everything. And so, but understand that like spearphishing attacks happen. Spearphishing is how they got access to the DNC servers. But again, that did not involve a thermostat. And honestly, what a thermostat hack would do would look highly unusual. For example, going back to the one example that I gave you of the person in 2019 that got hacked, well, they noticed that, for one, their heat would go up. And since there was a camera system and a microphone system, that's allowed the attacker to go and talk to these people or taunt them through their devices. Okay, so now, again, if your thermostat starts talking to you, well, that would be highly suspicious. You would think that that would make news, that people would report that, right? So if that happened during tabulation, during a contentious election, you would notice that and you would report it. And again, at a time where people were very wary of anything suspicious during an election, which, again, everybody usually is during any election, would be concerned if something weird started happening, okay? And again, in order for this conspiracy theory to work and change the outcome of an election, it would have to have happened at many different places at simultaneously, like almost simultaneously, basically, at the same time. That didn't happen. We don't have any reports of that. And so for this to be evidence of mass voter fraud, or for this to happen, I mean, we would have some signs. Okay? There would be some reports of weirdness happening, but there wasn't. So now the only thing that they can point to is, well, it took a while to count the votes. Oh, okay. You realize that you had absentee and mail-in ballots, right? Something that we already knew and said was going to happen. Hey, it's going to take a while to count the votes for all the votes to get in because you have a mail-in and absentee ballots. You know why? Because of worldwide pandemic, COVID-19. But here's the thing about conspiracies. If you have a mind that sees conspiracies, you can still somehow connect dots, even dots that aren't even there, or just random dots, random occurrences, and think, aha, knew it. It's the person at the whiteboard. It's Glenn Beck with the whiteboard. You know, it's somebody with like a bulletin board with a bunch of unrelated things pinned in. You know, that's what it is. And yet they're like, I see the things that you don't. I'm drawing connections here where you haven't drawn connections, but I'm doing that because I'm smart and you're dumb. The opposite is usually true. But understand that I bring that up because that's not going to convince any of those people that the conspiracy didn't happen. And honestly, I'm not trying to convince people. People like Trump will believe any conspiracy. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that Trump had a position of power, and so he literally sent people to investigate, wasting time and money. No evidence, no evidence. Now, for him, it's one part being gullible, another part having no understanding of how things actually work, but the biggest part of this is his ego. His ego would not allow him to accept a loss. So now he convinced himself, no, because of his ego, that I could not lose if there must have been something shady here. That thermostats, bamboo ballots, the space lasers, whatever. Something stole it from me because there's no way I could lose because I'm not a loser. That's what it is. So, again, lying and cheating to yourself, convince yourself that conspiracies are right, because your psyche is delicate. It is very, very fragile. And, I mean, that's who he is. He's fragile. Fragile. Now, one last thing. So now, I keep saying, could this happen? Could this happen? There's a possibility, yes, that elections can be hacked. Understand that the more stuff that you connect to the internet, the more it's possible for malicious people to break in. So you do need to be mindful. Now, how do you do that? You use strong passwords. Use multiple authentication measures and verification features. Things like two-factor authentication and more. Okay. Don't click on things that you get in your email, like random stuff. Don't do that. So also, let me tell you a story here. So this is my first personal run-in. All right. So back when I was like 15, 16 years old, my family got our first family computer. Now, we had an old Gateway, 56K modem. It shows you how old I am, right? So now, when I was using it, I found out the hard way not to click on things. Because there was, I don't know if anybody remembers MSN Messenger, okay? I remember. And using MSN Messenger, those Messenger apps would have occasionally like a worm that would go through them. Not like a worm that you would treat with ivermectin, but like, you know what I'm saying? Not a physical worm. But, there was a thing that went around, and what caught me is there was a game, an alleged game that was connected to this that would come through. Like how it would work is that it would infect somebody's computer, and they would send messages to people on their friends list, right? And that message would contain a link, a download. So now what got me when I was 15 was a game called Shoot George W. Bush in the Balls. Or something, some sort of variation of that. And so I see that pop up, and I'm like, hell yeah, man, I'm coming for your balls, George W. Bush. Shoot you in the balls. Well, I clicked that, and what did I get? I got a virus. Lesson learned, all right? I didn't end up shooting George W. Bush in the balls in Roblox. Or on MSN Messenger. Or anything like that. So, but look, I'm sharing that story because it's kind of a lesson that I learned when I was younger, and not to click on things that you're not sure. Okay, so don't go to suspicious websites. Don't obviously don't share your password. Don't make your password or anything like that. All right, just be safe. Be safe. So now, I want to go here to election security for a second. So, as I mentioned, Brad Friedman, he's a writer over at the Brad blog, and he does a fantastic show, and he's a friend of the show, and he looks out for election security. So I reached out to him earlier, right? And I asked him what he thought about this story. And he says, my tweet, of course, is like, hey, what do you think about the whole thermostats hack the election for China? And I said, I think it's kind of bonkers. He responded by saying, correct, bonkers. Especially since so far there's zero evidence of computer results changing paper ballots in places where they've checked. But he added, could it actually be done? Well, that's a separate matter. So, and what I'm saying is, I think the best way to do, and he believes the best way to do our elections, is to make sure that we have hand-counted paper ballots that are counted in plain view. So I think that's important because even though we haven't had an election that has had a hacking episode, okay, other than, of course, what happened with the DNC, which was more, as I said before, spear phishing. They got the password and were able to access the system that way and access the files. That's because we haven't had an actual, I guess, since it hasn't actually happened, it doesn't mean it can't happen in the future. And so we do need to make sure that we have better election security. And I think the best way to do that is to get rid of the voting machines and to just do hand-counted paper ballots. It's the best way. All right. Go to Boebert. Yes, I am 38, by the way. I have, again, dated myself. Almost time for my back medication. Okay. Anyway. Oh, you don't get it. They changed the room temperature so that people would vote for Biden. Nice. Nice. All right. Get to Norway. Actually, this is serious stories. So we had some very sad news out of Norway. A man armed with a bow and arrow had killed 5 people in the generally peaceful Nordic country. So the attack actually happened in a small town of Kongsberg. It's a town of about 28,000 people in southeastern Norway. So this was a gigantic deal. The perpetrator has been apprehended, so is alive, and has been believed to have acted alone. So I don't really have any more details about that. I'm sure more details will come out later. So now the result of that, 5 people are dead, and the country is in absolute shock. So the death toll turns out to be worse of any one attack in Norway since 2011. So this is what they call well, not necessarily mass shooting, but mass killing. And so now in 2011, of course, that's when far-right extremist Anders Breivik killed 77 people. That's teenagers at a youth camp. So now 5 people dead in one attack. Serious problem in Norway. Now in America, of course, literally Tuesday. All right. In fact, in the first 5 months of 2021, 8,100 people in the United States were killed as a result of gun violence. That's 54 people a day. 5 people lose their lives in Norway as what they're calling a result of a terrorist attack is gigantic for this country. It's so disturbing to them that their police said that they had ordered officers nationwide to start carrying firearms. So now, wait. We're in America, obviously, and so the thought of police being unarmed is, wait, what? No, they're unarmed? Really? Generally, yes. Norwegian police are normally unarmed, but do have access to guns and rifles when necessary or when needed. And so, again, could you imagine living in a country where cops are unarmed? It's hard to imagine, but I think it's obviously because they don't need to be armed. Again, if 5 people being killed causes such a national emergency that now that's when they bring out their guns, it's a pretty good bet that you're living in a very safe country. Again, you compare that to the United States, disaster. So now GOP Representative Lauren Boebert tried to make a comparison, but she did it in, of course, the dumbest way possible. Here's what she tweeted. A man in Norway just killed a bunch of people with a bow and arrow. Norway has some of the strictest gun laws around, yet mass killings still occur. Liberals need to understand it is not the gun, it is the criminal who still commits the act. So, of course, look, that sets up a straw man argument. For one, I mean, again, big problems with their logic, all right? We realize, I mean, everybody realizes that, yes, people will sometimes do criminal things. No shit. Oh, no way. Oh, no, people will do criminal things. Oh, my God. Now, the thing is, and really the question is, okay, do we want to make it harder or easier as a society for people to do mass murder? I mean, yes, we all have established that sometimes this is going to happen. People are going to snap. or have an issue or whatever, or have a grievance, are we going to make it easier or harder for them to grab a weapon and kill a bunch of people? Now, that shouldn't be a difficult question, but the right wing tends to think, no, we should make it easier. And so understand that more guns do make it easier. Now, this isn't to say that, like, oh, we should ban all the guns. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying is that it's a statistical fact that guns make it easier to do mass murder. You know what else makes it easier to do mass murder? Bombs. This is why we don't allow people to own those or guided missiles. Okay? And look, even there are exceptions, of course, for collectors, but we generally don't allow people to own machine guns for the same reason. It's almost as if there are laws that are being written that restrict the most devastating weapons because of the fact that they're devastating. All right? And of course, guns are also pretty easy to use. It just makes sense, right? So now, understand too that we have generally pretty lax laws for semi-automatic weapons like hunting rifles. We tend to think that those are fairly okay. Now, wait, you can still hurt people with those. Well, yeah, of course. You can still even hurt a lot of people with those. But it's a little bit more difficult to do. So there's a sliding scale here of effectiveness at killing things. And generally, of course, hunting rifles are used for the purpose of hunting game, deer, pheasant, birds, varmints, etc. And I think that's fine. But like, as far as other things like a bow and arrow, right? It's a little bit difficult to go in a mass murder spree with a bow and arrow. Again, pretty impressive that this person killed 5 people. I mean, you've got to be pretty good with it. And so I think that makes it easier for this to be more of like a premeditated type of attack. And I think, in my opinion, again, we don't know the motive. We don't have that information yet. But it feels like in order to do something like that, you might have to have some sort of premeditation. That's what I think. I don't know generally how often stuff like this happens. Fairly rare. Now, with gun murders and suicides, since it is so easy for you to use a gun, it makes it easier to pick it up when you're, for example, not yourself mentally, when you're having like a mental issue, right? Like a crime of passion, for example. You don't think clear, you're not thinking straight, you're overwhelmed with emotion. Things like that do happen. And so when you have easier access to weapons, it makes it easier to kill someone else or yourself. And so, I mean, that's why we have higher amounts of gun murders and suicides per capita in this country than we do anywhere else. And so, again, easier to pick up a gun, point and shoot, bow and arrow, obviously more factors to consider here. A gun is just better at killing. It's more efficient. That's why we use guns in war instead of bows and arrows or knives and sticks. And so, unfortunately, Boebert or right-wingers don't understand that concept. Because why would she? Why would she? So she got some pushback from this. Now, Shannon Watts responded to her tweet by saying, there were a total of 25 murders in Norway in 2018. In America, 16,214 people were murdered in 2018, mostly with guns. Try again. So now, look, the common rebuttal to that is, oh yeah? Well, Norway has a smaller population. Okay, yes, that's factual. They have a population of 5 million people. The United States has a population of 330 million people. That said, compared to Norway, per capita, we still have an exceptionally large gun death rate. So, for example, the United States has a total of 12.121 gun-related deaths per 100,000 people, and a 4.46 gun homicide rate. So now you compare that to Norway, which has 1.75 gun-related deaths per 100,000 people, and a 0.1% homicide rate per year. So, wow. It could be that they're doing something right and we're doing something wrong. Could it be the fact that they have, yes, more strict gun laws, but also maybe you could add in other things. This is not just about the guns. It's also about the factors that drive violence, the factors that drive crime. For example, Norway has a better standard of living. They have a more generous welfare state. They have health care that is guaranteed for everyone, including mental health care. The thing that Republicans tend to scream about every time there is a mass shooting, like, oh my God, mass shooting. Don't talk about the guns. Don't talk about anything except for mental health. Okay, let's talk about mental health. What are you going to do for mental health? We're going to do absolutely nothing. In fact, we're going to make it harder for you to go and get health care for mental health care. Well, then why are you talking about mental health care? Just because it's a distraction. And understand that's how it works with conservatives. But again, Norway does not have some of the social problems that we have. They have higher wages. They have lower poverty levels in their country. And again, they do have guaranteed health care. And so, maybe we should do some of those things and try to alleviate poverty and help people get health care and things like that. But no, Republicans say, no, that'd be socialism. And here in America, we have freedom. Does Norway have freedom? I don't think so. Now, ridiculousness, of course. Here's the thing. You know what, actually, let's just go to some fun tweets. This is already depressing enough. All right. Just a couple of these. Responding to Lauren Boebert, Abandoned America says, do you have someone that tells you to say the stupid things you do, or do you just come up with them on your own? Another person, Jason the 13th, says, I wanted to say something to show you that Lauren Boebert is so dumb, but she beat me to it. Always bet on stupid. Always. And finally, the nicest boy in the website says, yes, the painful long Norwegian history of bow and arrow massacres. You goddamn lying, seditious clown. Truer words have not been spoken. All right. Okay. I know I'm gonna go long, but I'm used to this. So let's go. We got one more story. This is important. It's Striketober. I think you're all gonna really love this. I know I do. It appears that after decades of stagnant wages and eroding workers' rights, workers are fighting back. And it's awesome. So now, former Labor Secretary Robert Reich had observed on Wednesday that with employees in industries across the spectrum set to strike or now are currently on strike, the U.S. is actually closer than it has ever been in decades to experiencing something that is a general strike. Now, he writes in The Guardian, quote, you might say workers have declared a national general strike until they get better pay and improved working conditions. No one calls it a general strike, but in its own disorganized way, it's related to the organized strikes breaking out across the land. Hollywood TV and film crews, John Deere workers, Alabama coal miners, Nabisco workers, Kellogg's workers, nurses in California, healthcare workers in Buffalo. In fact, of course, labor advocates are calling this show of union power and labor solidarity as Striketober. I love it. Oh, I love Striketober. So good. So good. In fact, look, there's a lot of different strikes going on right now. Of course, you've got John Deere, 10,000 workers officially on strike. And the Washington reports that the company offer included a raise of about 5 to 6%. Union officials said the proposed contract did not meet workers' retirement and wage goals. And so that offer was rejected. Good. In fact, Chris Larson, who's a longtime worker at the John Deere plant in Iowa, says the cards are in our favor right now. It's never been lined up this well for us. And Larson pointed out to the company's record profits, as well as the huge pay raise awarded Chief Executive John May. The labor shortage is in our favor, too. Deere can't hire enough people with the package they're offering right now. Oh, I love to see this. I love to see this. Another employee told WQAD, an ABC affiliate in Moline, Illinois, says, "We aren't asking to be millionaires. We're asking for fair wages, a pension, and post-retirement health care." After 30 years or more of giving your body to a company moving 1,000-pound castings around or assembling tractors, it rips your body apart. It's not unreasonable to not want to have to worry in life of what if. Look, I got a personal story. I know, anecdote Andy over here. But no, look, my grandpa worked at a company doing ball bearings. He's had to have his hip and his shoulders replaced from the work that he did. He retired from there, got a pension. Very, very few people now have pensions anymore. So they've been taking those things away. And so, he's lucky, but even he says, don't go into factory work. It will rip you apart. It'll destroy your body. And he's absolutely right. And so for people to work in those industries and not get paid a fair wage, especially when you have the management and the CEO that is getting paid, gigantic earnings, and them not having health care, the workers, and having to accept contracts with very little health care, which, by the way, we could all solve that problem by doing Medicare for all, which unfortunately some unions are opposed, which is sad to see. Nonetheless, you have people that are just fighting for basic benefits, higher benefits that have been cut over the last 20, 30 years, and higher wages. They deserve these things, and now finally they're fighting back. Finally. And so I want to go to the news coverage on here, because there actually is some coverage going on about these worker strikes. And this actually comes from Good Morning America, which actually did an excellent job talking about these strikes. Take a look.
In a wave of labor stoppages across the country, there is a new militant spirit in the American workforce. Workers want more, and they're willing to strike to get it. This morning, 10,000 workers at John Deere hit the picket lines in Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas. They argued that even as the agricultural equipment company's profits grew by 61% in recent years, and their CEO's salary grew by 160% during the pandemic, their pay has actually been cut.
We need to let them know that they can't continue to take our money and take our money and take our money.
Across the country, labor is on the march. In California and Oregon, 24,000 nurses and other healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente voted to authorize a strike over pay and better working conditions. Meanwhile, union workers at Kellogg's cereal plants have been on strike for more than a week, angry about long hours, including 7-day work weeks.
Our number one priority is to get back to the negotiations table and reach a contract so our employees can get back to their jobs and their lives.
And soon, Hollywood may see a walkout. 60,000 film and TV crew members could walk off the job Monday over what they claim are unfair working conditions.
Our hours are really grueling, and we need not just rest between the workdays and over the weekend, but an actual meal break during the day.
And across the country, a record number of workers are quitting their jobs. 4.3 million Americans, or 2.9% of the workforce, left their jobs in August. Many are looking for better work conditions and pay, especially with inflation on the rise. Several forces are driving all of this. As the pandemic comes to an end, companies are seeing sky-high demand and very tight labor markets. They're having trouble filling jobs. Workers notice that top executives and bosses are getting paid, and so for the first time in a long, long time, workers have the upper hand.
Fuck yeah. Look, again, excellent reporting right there. But more importantly, look at all this. This is wonderful to see. Absolutely incredibly encouraging. So I want to go back to more words from Reich here. Now, he also wrote that were frontline workers across the country putting their health at risk over the last 18 months by going back to work at companies that have raked in historic profits, workers are reluctant to return or remain in their old jobs, mostly because they're burned out. And he said, years ago when I was Secretary of Labor, I kept meeting working people all over the country who had full-time work, but complained that their jobs paid too little and had too few benefits, or were unsafe, or required lengthy or unpredictable hours. And again, that was over 20 years ago. And we're still facing the same problems. Many of them said that their employers treated them badly, harassed them, and did not respect them. And of course, that continues. And he said, since then, these complaints have only grown louder. According to polls, for many, the pandemic was the last straw. Workers are fed up, wiped out, done in, and run down. In the wake of so much hardship, illness, and death during the past year, they're not going to take it anymore. Now, he also added that corporate America wants to frame this as a labor shortage. Now, you're hearing that, of course, everywhere, right? Oh, it's a labor shortage, labor shortage, labor shortage. Not actually a labor shortage. Reich explains this as, what's really going on is more accurately described as a living wage shortage, a hazard pay shortage, a childcare shortage, a paid sick leave shortage, and a healthcare shortage. Unless these shortages are rectified, many Americans won't return to work anytime soon. So now let me relate this, of course, to the Republican narrative as well. So now you guys remember the conversation that they were having where it's like, oh, the unemployment benefits, it's the enhanced unemployment benefits. That's why we have a quote unquote labor shortage. Oh, yes. It doesn't have anything to do with, low pay. I mean, of course, we're paying people more money to stay home, which makes sense during a pandemic, by the way. And so they're not going to go back to work unless we're not going to boost wages. That'd be insane. Our donors, our owner donors would get very, very mad. That's why we're just going to cut unemployment. And so they did that in many different states. And what happened? No change. You know why? Because it didn't have anything to do with the unemployment benefits. What it had to do was all of the stuff that was not only outlined in that video, but also what Reich was talking about. Workers are sick of being underpaid and not cared for by their companies, by their bosses. And so, one more thing too, by the way. There are people that are still trying to get jobs, obviously, right? Now, I've seen some anecdotal stories, and understand, take that if you will, of people that have been applying for jobs, and were denied. So, and even though that they're saying they can't find workers. Now, I think that's because corporations want to go back to what it was like pre-pandemic, where they could essentially crush us and, pay us poor wages and treat us poorly, and we just lay down and accept it. Not anymore. Not going to happen. We're done with that. So now AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler told The Hill that the Striketober movement shows that with economic inequality getting worse and worse, unions, labor is the solution. And said, this is the capitalist system that has driven us to the brink. Unite Here, which represents 300,000 hospitality employees, also expressed solidarity with the workers taking part in Striketober and urged them to see themselves as in a position of power. Quote, it is clear that we are in a significant moment for union organizing. What we cannot do is lose this moment. The so-called labor shortage, which we really know is just a shortage of jobs that pay us enough to live on, is a powerful bit of leverage workers have over employers right now. You know what scares bosses? Sarah Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, added, worker solidarity. Striketober is terrifying the bosses. Yes, yes, and hell yes. All of this. So understand, I do have my differences with some unions, for example, the ones that fight against universal health care, Medicare for all. But that's not with the membership. It's with some of the leadership. But overall, unions are a net positive to this country. Labor needs to band together, and we need to support these workers. So what that means, of course, is that with all the people that are going on strike, it means that we should not buy their products until these strikes are resolved, until the workers actually get a fair contract. So that means don't buy the products, don't cross picket lines, and if you can, if you're able, try to set up mutual aid networks for some of the striking workers to help them support their families. The longer you can keep these going, the more favorable conditions that you're going to give to these workers when it comes to contract negotiations. You have to support these workers through either of those ways. All of them if you can. I get it. Because here's the thing. This also doesn't just affect union workers, right? So if you want better wages, if you want better benefits, you have to support these workers, because these labor moves, these things that the unions win trickle down to everybody else. And not only that, but if they win good contracts, it inspires others to band together, to fight for better contracts, or to fight to even create a union. That's why it's important. So worker solidarity, Striketober, we all need to get together. We all need to get together and fight for each other. We need to fight for each other and for labor everywhere. All right. How come you ain't talking about inflation? It's because Biden is president. Or is it because Biden is president? No, inflation is an issue. Yes, it is an issue. And one that could be solved by raising wages. You know what Joe Biden hasn't done? Raise wages. So congratulations, I just talked about it. And I'd say basically the same thing. The Republicans did not raise wages. There you go. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party are not raising wages. You remember Kirsten Sinema with her thumbs down for increasing the minimum wage. Now, understand that like most Democrats at least say that they're in favor of raising the minimum wage $15 an hour. No Republicans sign on for that at all. None. So, what? Yeah, I know, it's just a troll. All right. Anyway, that's all I got today. Let's raid in to somebody on Twitch here. Oh, hey, Inusara, thank you for giving out a community sub on Twitch here. Appreciate that. Let's see. Super chat here. Refresh. Let's see. Elwell says, my mom couldn't get her hands on a Cabbage Patch doll in 1983. Could I be blaming Joe? Obviously, 100% Joe Biden's fault. Well, I mean, he was probably in Congress at that time. So, you know, of course we can blame. Let's see. Jonathan Leiter says, it's not the bullet that kills you, it's the hole. Rialan N says, oh, thank you very much, by the way, for the 3070 when it's in stock. Not going to be there for a while. So, all right. Anyway, yes, you know what? That's a good idea. Maybe I'll go in and talk about inflation and ways that we can, or at least the administration can work on inflation. So maybe that's a good topic for tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. We'll talk about that. All right. That said, we're going to do a raid here. Let's raid into reactions with the wonderful, lovely host, Ravana. That. And for everybody else, please, as I said, like and share the stream if you haven't already. Come back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here. Same channel, same place, same time, as always. And remember, change begins with you. Love you guys. Till tomorrow.
dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Give me a break.
Mike Pounds.
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.